Hi. So, just doing a quick stream. This is also my first stream in English. I hope my accent sort of picks up, but I just wanted to make a quick stream just because I was too swamped and I couldn't really find the time to, well, do any streams. And I didn't really want to let this idea of working with the garage door open and streaming essentially die out. And so, what we're going to do today is we're mainly going to talk about Dotfiles. We're mostly going to talk about things and probably not going to do things that much. So, what are Dotfiles? I don't really know what sort of was the first system where Dotfiles became a thing. But what Dotfiles are is they are configuration files, right? And okay, what can you use them? What are they configuring essentially? Programs, various programs. So what happens is these, let me make my camera bigger since I'm not really showing anything right now. So they're called Dotfiles because in Linux, the file names that begin with a dot in the very beginning, and I can show you examples down the line, these are considered to be hidden files, right? I will probably open Safari now. This is a quite literally a completely fresh install of macOS that I haven't really spent any time configuring apart from, well, setting OBS up. And so there's a lot of stuff that I'll need to do, and hopefully I'll do during the stream. But okay, let's see if this is working. Yep, there we go. So file names, for example, in Windows, there is a concept of hidden files. Hidden files in Windows, the average user doesn't really interact with at all, and you somehow have to become aware of the fact that there is such a thing as a hidden file in the first place. So in Windows, you have to go to the File Explorer settings, and you have to say, well, okay, I want you to show me those files. And then you can see them appear on your screen, but they're sort of grayed out, semi-transparent. In Linux devices, and I guess macOS is Linux under the hood. So let's just, what's the default terminal? I think it was something. Yeah, we'll have a lot of configuring to do in this device. But maybe. Yep, there's the terminal. That's all I needed. So let's grab the terminal and let's make it a bit, larger. And then I need to also. Can I just zoom in, or do I have to? Okay, yeah, sure. Let's zoom in. Cool. Maybe a bit more. Yep, that's nice. That's nice. So in Linux systems, in Unix systems, what happens is, okay, I can do ls, and if I make a file where the file name begins with a dot, so I can do touch, which is used to create a file, or do some other stuff that you shouldn't worry about at the moment. If I make a file and the file name begins with a dot, so for example, hidden file, right? And if I do ls, which lists the files in the current directory, there's no hidden file. And to get to that hidden file to show up, I have to do something like, specify some other kind of flags to pass some other kind of flag to ls. And in fact, you can see, well, now I can see the hidden file appear. And so the reason that these configuration files are named .files is that it's really convenient to have all of the file names start with a dot, so that they don't pollute the directory you're working on by default. So imagine I have a lot of files here, right? A bunch of files like the so-called hidden file I just made, right? So just like hidden over here. Imagine I have a bunch of these files, and I wouldn't necessarily want to have them fill the output of ls every time I'm calling ls. I would like them to get out of my way. And so you can use hidden files to do that, and it's really handy when you're working with configuration files. And so these configuration files typically have a file name that starts with a dot, and that's why they're called .files. The Linux philosophy is you typically, I won't necessarily say that they're only made with the power user in mind, but they're definitely made to be a lot more configurable than what you would typically see in operating systems such as Windows. And if you couple that with the fact that the Unix philosophy, right, it's you have a lot of programs, and you can compose these programs to do whatever you need to do. So for example, a basic example here would be, let's say this is a huge directory with a lot of stuff inside, and ls just lists the files in the current directory. And then I can take the output of that command, and I could do something like, is there something here that's named desktop? And indeed there is something here named desktop. A better example highlighting this would be getting a bunch of current processes running and then filtering them out to only show, for example, whatever, this one, right? So let's say I can do this, and I can only get the output of the processes that I care about, and stuff like that. So yeah, Linux are made to be very configurable, and I mean, this is MacOS is it uses a Linux kernel, so all of that stuff applies to Mac as well. So since I haven't really been coding since I was 5 years old, my journey, my chronicles, right? I started coding while I was at the university, and I sort of joined a team that was, so in Greece we have this idea of an entity, of an organization that's dedicated to free and open source software. And the university had a team that was somehow loosely coupled with that organization, and I joined the team, and that's how I, came across Linux in the first place. And so I was using Windows at the time, and I said, well, okay, I want to give Linux a shot, and I installed, I think my very first Linux distribution was Mint. So Mint Linux, this one right here. So I installed Mint. I probably stayed with Mint for like a week maximum. I think it wasn't even a week. And then I switched to Ubuntu. I put it Ubuntu in. Sure, whatever. I played around with Ubuntu, and then I got really introduced to the idea of having a lot of different distributions, and then I can't recall exactly recall how. It was probably the memes, right? But I heard about Arch Linux, which is a distribution that is more dedicated to the power user. So a lot of stuff that in other distributions are kind of hidden um, under the rug. In Arch Linux, you kind of you have to face them head first in order to, well, basically even install the distribution. So Arch Linux, people that use Arch Linux, they have this tendency where they really like to brag about the fact, to boast about the fact that they're using Arch Linux, and so there's some memes like, by the way, I use Arch. I use Arch, by the way. Anyways, I found out that Arch Linux was a thing, and I wanted to be a part of this. I tried to install them a bunch of times, right? So if I go to Arch Linux installation and I go to the Arch Linux wiki, you'll probably figure out why I'm saying that this doesn't really... well, let's put it that way. It needs some effort, right? Just to get things started. So you have to, get an installation image. So far, so good. And an installation medium, and then you boot into the live environment. And then, for example, you have to set the console keyboard layout and font, right? And you have to connect to the internet. Now, these are things that you update the system clock and so on and so forth. These are things that you typically do when you're installing an operating system like Windows, like Mac. But the big difference is these operating systems, they come with some graphical installers that take care of these things for you. But Arch Linux is customizable and right from the get-go. And with great power comes with great responsibility, and there's a ton of things you have to do, so you have to understand how to navigate all of this, even to go as far as to get your system working. And so I tried to use this and a bunch of times, and I didn't really know anything about computers or live, let alone Linux. So I couldn't even install Arch Linux, and I had to somehow force myself to spend enough time to get things working. And I said, well, okay, I got a USB drive with Arch installed, and I got another USB drive with Ubuntu. I booted into Ubuntu from that USB drive. I zeroed out my laptop. By the way, that was a really cool laptop that was stolen from me. I didn't really have the original, the good original ThinkPad keyboard. It was a ThinkPad from the X series, so it was probably something like a ThinkPad X270, something like that. Maybe it was an older ThinkPad. Anyways, it was great. It was refurbished. I paid maybe maximum 200 euros. It came with an external 9-cell battery. It was amazing. Anyways, so I zeroed out my drive, and then I got rid of the Ubuntu flash drive. So I had only a laptop that had nothing, inside the drive. So I couldn't use. And I had a USB drive with the Arch Linux installation image. And then I had my phone that I used to browse the wiki, to browse the installation guide. I got Arch Linux working eventually, right? So if you install Arch Linux, out of the box, you're greeted just with a terminal, right? And nothing else. A TTY is what they call it. So let's see if I can show you what that looks like. Essentially, it's just a black screen, right? This is a login screen, and then you have something like I think you get the idea. You're imagine this without this being a window. So the whole screen is black, and you get a simple prompt, and you can enter commands, and that's the only thing you can do, right? And hopefully you've done things like maybe set up access to the internet. Things like Bluetooth are not a given, and they're not necessary to have a working system. So you have to put in additional effort to get Bluetooth working and stuff like that. So I had this working. I played around with the command line. Again, I didn't really know what I was doing, and then I figured out using my phone that, okay, well, how do I wanted to Google stuff. So I think it sort of went like this. So I learned about there's browsers that don't really need, they're not graphical programs, they're command line programs. So a good example is the Lynx, I think. Yeah, so a text web browser that's Lynx. So you can use that while you're inside the terminal to open some websites. Of course, nowadays every website runs 30 megabytes of minified compressed JavaScript and things like that. So the modern day internet is not really easy to navigate using these programs. But anyways, I was using that primarily to search for stuff that weren't available in the Arch Wiki. I learned about a thing called window managers. Window manager. So a window manager. Okay, let me show you. A window manager is a program. It's a software, right? That's all it is. And by the way, I like that ArchWiki results are now first and Wikipedia results are second. So a window manager is system software that controls the placement and appearance of windows within a windowing system and a graphical user interface. So first of all, you have to have some kind of a graphical user interface, which means you have to have some sort of a server. Like X11 is really common, and it's a Windows system, right? So you need a windowing system like X11. That will only get you so far, because the windowing system is something that you use with a window manager. So the windowing system is just a bunch of calls you can do to do stuff like place windows on the screen and resize them, close them, maybe capture mouse events and keyboard events. That's what it is, and there's no user interface. And so graphical, GUI programs will use the windowing system, but there are other abstractions built on top. So window managers are software you can use to control the windowing system. So for example, here in macOS, I can do this, I can do this, I can do, I can maximize, I can minimize, I can close. And there's this GUI to do all of this that you take for granted. This is the window manager, and there's a lot of window managers because at the end of the day, a window manager is just a piece of software. And a really cool window manager is i3 that I hope will, of course, but I mean, it's whatever. Yeah. And by the way, I will configure that So i3 is what is called a tiling window manager. What is a tiling window manager? A tiling window manager is a window manager that uses something, some sort of a formula, something, some kind of an algorithm to calculate where exactly the window should be placed on the screen. And it says here that this is opposed to the more common approach used by stacking window managers, which allow the user to drag windows around instead of windows snapping into a position. Now, of course, this is also a thing you can do with tiling window managers, but by default, tiling window managers looks something like this, right? So you have this. You have the software calculating these areas of the screen, and then every window gets placed to a particular section, and then you can maybe have them swap places or resize them, and you can even sort of replicate this behavior in Windows. So in Windows, the poor man's tiling window manager is, I guess, it's not really a window manager, but in Windows there's something called Partoys that I think, it's from Microsoft, and Partoys it has a lot of utilities, and Partoys comes with something that's called Fancy Zones. And Fancy Zones, what it does is it allows you to define a couple of predefined layouts. So here, for example, you can see there's a layout where there's three different sections, three different areas, and you have this area, this vertical one, and then this area. And then you can, you have a hotkey and that's configurable, and you can use that to snap the windows to these zones, and essentially they get resized. But that's not something you get out of the box using Windows. It's not something you get out of the box using macOS. As you can see, I can't really do such a thing. Or maybe I think one of the most recent macOS updates, they have some primitive tiling support. So maybe macOS tiling. I just want to show you, a quick example. macOS Sequoia, blah blah blah. Do I just drag? Yeah, so I guess this is what you can consider. That's so stupid. Okay, yeah, I have some. Anyways, you get the idea. So more importantly, you can use a window manager in Linux like i3, that is a tiling window manager, and that's what I used. And well, to use this efficiently, you have to let go of the mouse. So that was the first milestone. That was the first real milestone beyond just getting Linux to run, getting Arch Linux to run. And yeah, to remotely be productive, you have to let go of the mouse, and you have to embrace the keyboard, and you have to embrace using specific key presses to interact with the software. And so what you do using i3 is, well, see how I have to, say for example, I want to snap this down here. I have to use my mouse, I have to click here, and I have to drag, and I have to get it to do the thing that I want it to do. And you can see how easy it is to fuck up. And also, I'm using two screens at a time, and if I move the window over here, this doesn't really work that well because it just moves the window to the other screen. And so what you can do instead to make the software way more usable is you can have a specific key of the keyboard, which we call, and you can bind it. So there's this term called key binding, right? It's a binding of a specific key of the keyboard to do one thing, or a combination of keys. So you can have a key command or control. You can have it be used with a combination of other keys. So you can say, okay, I can press command or control and the left arrow, and this will automatically snap here. And this is a huge improvement. And then you can have key binds that allow you to, while you're working on this is the active window, and you want to go here, so you have to click, and maybe these are, or you can use Command Tab or Alt Tab if you're in Windows. No, you can have them side by side, and then you can have a keybind to swap, to resize them, and so on and so forth. And okay, enough about the total introductory stuff. So I think I originally had something. I had a i3, and I configured i3. So back in the day, it's not like I've been coding since I was 5, but back in the day, I definitely remember the Arch Wiki. While it was awesome, and especially the installation guide in the Arch Wiki to be harder to go through, or to be lacking information compared to where it is right now. But usually the programs that I got to interact with, they didn't really have sensible defaults. So you could split them into two categories in my mind. None of them, really ideal. One category was, you had software that didn't really come with defaults, and you had to configure them just to be able to use them. You couldn't really use them out of the box. That was stupid. That is stupid. I understand the sentiment behind it, but you should strive to make software that is both configurable and that can have some sensible defaults. At the end of the day, your software has to have some level of documentation and some kind of sensible defaults so that other people can use it, and so that other people can justify spending enough time playing, using with your software and configuring your software. And this is something that I say a lot, and I try to really stress when it comes to open source software and open source in general, open access. So if I create the best software there is, right, to do a specific task, and I have it open source, right, I have it in a public repository, and there's no README, right? Or I implemented a color theme, and I'm not including a screenshot in the README. Why are you making it hard for other people to justify spending time looking into your software? Because I have to probably clone, right, your repository. I have to open the code, and I have to look around to understand how to use this thing. And in my mind, this doesn't it borderline classifies as open source, because you put it out there, but no one will really use it. It's one of the things that you learn, that you have to, you can be an ideologue and have these really strong opinions about everything, but at the end of the day, you have to make some compromises at some basic level. Otherwise, no one will care about what you're doing, and you'll inevitably have zero impact. And again, you have to have this idea, this mindset of being in a constant state when you try to make the environment you're working with and the environment that you're interacting with better you, right? Force you to become better. And documentation writing is a skill. It's an invaluable skill, and what better way to learn how to write documentation than creating some software, writing documentation for that software, putting it out there, having other users to tell you that the documentation sucks, and hopefully update the documentation, right? And use other software that, again, have lackluster documentation. So i3, I don't know what the defaults of i3 are today, but I remember i3 having these really nonsensical defaults. Like the key bindings were really weird. Really, they were not ergonomic whatsoever. Now there's some software. So in general, there's a lot of fields, and I remember there was really famous Strange Loop, I think it was. There was a really famous conference talk about what I'm going to say right now. So let me see if I can quickly pull it up. Just because it's a cool. Oh my god! Thank God it's dark. So Strange Loop, I think it's one of the most watched videos. So Strange Loop conference is a well-known conference, and you can have, you know, there's a lot of great talks here. It might be the most known or one of the most known conferences that have to do with programming. Um, and so let's see. These are all great talks. I recommend basically all of these talks. So this is a really cool talk. Emery Berger is a professor that has done a lot of performance related stuff. I think the last thing I saw from Emery Berger was they did something that was an LLM that was integrated to GDB or something like that, and you could interact with that to sort of debug your program, something like that. Um, all of these are really, really, really well-known developers. Joe Armstrong, Rich Hickey is one of my favorites. Has some incredible talks, like Simple Made Easy, like my absolute favorite, which is called hammock-driven development. So a hammock is just a, this thing that you can tie between two trees, for example, and you can lay here. You can have it suspended between two or more points. And there's this talk that's my absolutely favorite talk, I think, at least from Rich Hickey, and it's called Hammock Driven Development. So it's talk about how basically to do anything useful, you have to step away from the computer and you have to really think, right? And it touches on ideas like deep work. Jonathan Blow is someone that talked a lot about deep work and the importance of deep work. I can probably deep games, maybe that's related, work-life balance, working hard, whatever. Deep work, getting into that flow state. There's DHH, another legendary programmer. Let's see, DHH, this guy. Also, I hugely recommend DHH. Go check him out. He recently made a podcast with Lex Friedman. They were talking for about 6.5 hours. Flow state. He talks a lot about flow state. Oh, Arch Linux, by the way. These moments of flow. What is it? Okay, yeah, it's a book. That's a great book. Flow state, all of that stuff. Anyways, let's see. I think Ivan is the one that developed. Let's see. Yep, he developed Elm. Elm is a really cool programming language. So what Elm is you build it for web development, basically. It's functional, purely functional. It's declarative. Declarative and functional programming, especially pure functional programming, they kind of go hand in hand, and you can use that to create web apps, and it's incredible. I think that there was some. I remember. By the way, this is a podcast that I really recommend. Developer Voices. It's just. I think the host is called Chris Jenkins, and there's a ton of really cool developers talking about all sorts of interesting things. And I remember, I think, listening to this podcast, I remember Ivan saying he's going to take a step back from Elm and maybe look into a better, improved version. Anyways, Don't quote me on that, but great person to, go and watch some talks by Ivan. I think he also has this really good talk on how you can make a programming language that is, people actually use, and the economics behind all of that. Um, this guy is Richard Feldman. He's also made a programming language, a functional programming language called Rock, and a bunch of other stuff. Again, really great guy. Go and look into talks by Richard Feldman, Bill Hull. Bill Hull made Odin. Laurie Scrow is involved with SIG. It's another programming language. Ginger Bill made Odin. Haseb Alim, he made Elixir. All of these are basically, really good. People you should honestly follow. Gleam is a great new programming language you can use. It's strongly statically typed, if I remember correctly. It's functional. It's based on the Beam, which is the Erlang virtual machine. It's really robust. This is Schaffmeister, I think he's called.
If you haven't exercised
Schaffmeister, sorry for the ad.
You have to.
Installation. He's used Common Lisp to do some really cool stuff. I will stop now. Oh, and by the way, I can do that forever. So I want to bring this eventually, sort of get back on track and start talking about Dotfiles. So I'll just show you these two things. Schaffmeister. I've also had the pleasure to watch his talk on European Lisp conference as well. And his most famous talk, he has a very famous talk. I think it's this one.
All right.
Yep. So he's implemented Common Lisp, that is a Lisp in the family of Lisps. It's, I guess, the most feature complete Lisp, and he implemented a Common Lisp using LLVM, and he did that because he wanted to work. He's a researcher. He's a professor, and he was doing some cool chemistry related work, and he tried to develop software to design molecules, and he had this huge C++ code base, and then he eventually exposed it to Common Lisp, and then used Common Lisp for the whole thing. It's a really cool guy, a really cool project, and it's also CLASP. He was able to also, I think, hire some really talented Lisp people, I'm pretty sure, their name, I think, is Haley Payton. Yeah, that's the site. Applied Lingua. So, anyways, he was able to hire people like Haley, I think. So that's cool. He's done a lot for Lisp. Anyways, and there's this. I think there was this. This talk here. GJS, Gerald Sussman. I won't talk about Sussman because that deserves at least a stream on its own. But my favorite professor, and this is probably the lecture that has left the biggest impression on me. So look into Gerald Sussman. That was amazing. I'm trying to find this. Strange Loop history. Yeah, that's the talk. Yeah. Oh, come on. Anyways, so you should watch that. So what happens is it's very common, across all fields. A lot of years into the past, people couldn't really collaborate because the bottleneck was technology, right? So, for example, if you were a researcher, you had to come across with the papers that were handwritten, and you had to get in contact with the original author, and the only way to do that was, via a conference, or you had to know someone that knows the author, and it was really hard to collaborate. Now we have access to the internet. There's, you can send emails. There's conferences everywhere. There's YouTube that I can use to simply watch conferences. So the main bottleneck right here is that there's a lot of information, and there's more information out there that we can handle. And it's really hard when you're working in a field to know what's already been done. And it's harder even to know why it's been done. Right, and this aptly named talk, all of this has happened before and it will all happen again. It shows you how, well, a lot of things that we think are new in computer science, they date back to the 60s or the 70s, and that's the thing. I think there's even a very famous meme, right? When you think you're working on your PhD and you have this really novel idea, or so you think, and then you dig into the literature and you figure out that there's always a guy that had the idea that you have back in the 70s. And so I'm saying all of this to bring this back together, that I was talking about sensible defaults and how back when I started using this software, programs didn't really have sensible defaults, and so it seemed. And there's some software that if you know the context, like when they were developed, you can understand why their defaults are the way they are. So a very good example of what I'm trying to say is Emacs. Emacs is, again, I mean, we can talk a lot about Emacs, but Emacs essentially is an operating system, right? Emacs is a text editor, and it's a programmable text editor. So it's made by a very famous guy, Richard Stallman, who has pioneered GNU and free and open source and all of that stuff, free software. And he's a legend, by the way. Richard Stallman worked on the CSAIL. CSAIL stands for Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, and it was in MIT. And that back in the day was where computer science happened eventually. Essentially, all of a very big part of the computer science that we know and love today, it comes from MIT CSAIL. And he was working on software, right, that was, and there, some companies started making products out of this software. And he was, I think, for some time, he was reverse engineering the new features of the competing software and integrating the new features into his own software that was free to use. So we're talking about a very talented hacker, and hackers in the. I know I'm rambling, but that's the purpose of this stream, so it's fine. Hackers in the original sense of the word. So hacker meant tinkerer, essentially, right? And there's a lot of cool books you can read about hacker history. Anyways, so he made Emacs. Emacs is a programmable text editor, and it uses this Lisp dialect, Emacs Lisp. And you can use that, and you can do all sorts of things. Anyways, it's amazing. There's a lot of memes how you can essentially do anything from inside Emacs, and Emacs is an operating system in disguise. And Emacs, while there's a lot of people to this day that, I mean, new release, major release, released 23 February this year. So a lot of people use Emacs, and Emacs has this horrendous default of there's something called meta key, and there's a lot of bindings that are all built around using control. And so you have things like control A, control C. And the problem with control is that you have to do this motion. And this applies strain not only to the finger here, but also you do this move. So it applies strain to the wrist and to the forearm, and it's a horrible default. And a lot of Emacs users, they complain about pinky fatigue for having to press control all the time. But, and you can say, well, how can a software that's so well designed have this atrocious default? Well, take a look at this. So the keyboards back in the day, so again, I mean, I can't really talk about this because I have to talk about a lot of stuff, but Lisps, they again originated from MIT, and the whole artificial intelligence, the early developments in artificial intelligence, they are closely related to MIT and CSAIL and Lisps, and they had Lisp machines. So these were hardware computers that run Lisp all the way down. Lisp famously was conceived to be strictly theoretical, right? And McCarthy said, the inventor of Lisp, I know I'm not spelling this right, but John McCarthy, he made Lisp, and he said, okay, I'm expecting this to be just a purely theoretical thing. And then another person came in, and he actually implemented, let me see if I can find this. So he made Lisp as a practical mathematical notation for computer programs, right? Based on lambda calculus and all of that stuff. And then he believed that blah 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 blah. Yeah. He thought that this is purely a theory stuff. And then Steve Russell actually implemented the interpreter, the evaluator in IBM machine code. So he said, look, why don't I program this eval? And I said to him, ho, you're confusing theory with practice. This eval is intended for reading, not for computing. But he went ahead and did it, and that's how Lisp as an actual language came to be. And then they made those Lisp machines, and the guy I talked about earlier, Sussman, he used a custom Lisp machine to prove that the movements, of the solar system are in fact chaotic. And anyways, we have a lot of stuff to talk about here. Probably not gonna do this in this stream. And so they had these Lisp machines, and the people using Emacs were using Lisp machines, and Lisp machines had this keyboard. Let me show you. So if you can see, for example, there's a meta key, and it's in here, and there's a control key, and there's a control key here. And the point is, they had keyboards where it actually made sense to use these keys. And so there's this notion of we take things from granted without knowing the context, and we often don't really challenge those assumptions. We take assumptions, right? So people develop something. There's some context, right? They're doing this at the time, they're biased, blah 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 blah. We're oblivious as to this context, and assumptions, we take assumptions as axioms, and we don't even challenge those assumptions. And there's a ton of examples, right? So for example, back in C89 and earlier programming languages, you had to declare everything at the top, right? And you may say, well, okay, this in practice is really cumbersome. So why would anyone at the right mind impose this completely ad hoc restriction that I have to define my libraries and my functions right at the top of the file? And programming languages, especially in the old days, they were made by brilliant people. So how could they have overlooked this very simple, idea of this thing is annoying, don't do that? Well, back in the day, they didn't have enough memory so that the compiler, so if you don't put the declarations in the beginning, the compiler does a pass and then it had to do another pass. And they couldn't fit this inside the memory, right? Context. Or, for example, they had this, in editors, they had this vertical line or this hard limit in the line must not go past the 80 characters length, but that's why they had small monitors. Right now you're coding in ultra wide screens. Well, maybe still limit the length of the line, but don't make it 80 characters. 80 is way too little. Anyways, sensible defaults and i3. So I configured i3 and I got it to work, and that was how I got introduced to the notion of configuring programs, right? Through Dotfiles. So the programs, because they're made to be actually configurable, you don't really do graphical user interface configuration stuff. You have text files and you edit the text files and you configure the file, the program. And so I configured i3, and that was my first exposure into the world of configuring your software. And that really changed me. It really changed me. I was a changed man. So you let go of the mouse and you embrace the keyboard. And you have these. i3 has a thing called workspaces. Windows, I think, have workspaces. MacOS has workspaces, but they're not usable. So in i3, let me see if I can pull that up. There's something called workspaces. That's really not helpful. So anyways, what you can do is you can also have a bar right here to display stuff. And you can say, well, okay, I'm going to send this in the in my second workspace. So with the press of two buttons, so you can do mod, right, super, control, whatever, and the number 2, and you can go to the second workspace, and you can do control and the number 1, and you can get back to. So it's essentially like having multiple screens and going back and forth. It's really useful. And it changed me, and I found about Luke Smith, who is incredible. I don't think he's really putting out videos any longer. Maybe he is. And he had this thing called Larbs. And Larbs is basically a script, right, that installs a lot of software that he uses and configures it. And it was incredible. So I used that, and I was using i3, and I had a lot of keybinds, and that's how I found out about Vim, the editor Vim. So I think Luke used, the very common keybinds to move between tiles. He used HJKL, and I was like, okay, this is very convenient because it's right on the home row, but what is this? And that's how I found out about Vim, right? And I had my bar, my status bar, and I had it configured, and I could see stuff about, the disk space and the memory usage and the CPU usage and my network and my i3 workspaces, and I had all of my i3 key bindings, and I had other key bindings. So for example, I could just press a bunch of stuff and open a PDF reader, right? Open my file explorer, and almost everything was TUI or CLI. So this is an example. It's a file manager, right? And it's right in the terminal. I think a more nowadays an alternative is NNN, I think. Yeah, so I had a lot of stuff like this just to get so that you can get a quick idea. So this is right in the terminal, and there's no context switch, and you can do everything, and it's actually so much better and so much more ergonomic, and you're so much faster. And I was having a good time. I had key bindings to open my email client, to open my MCCP music client player thingy. I was using the Vim browser that I'm not sure that is actively maintained. There was this browser called Qt browser, QUTE browser, QUTE browser, and the point was, you had other browsers before that. The point with Qt browser is that it's built. It's really built around Vim key bindings, and a thing you can do is you can press a single key, F, by default, and everything that is clickable on the page. Why can't I zoom in? Okay, everything that is clickable, you have this pop-up, this overlay. With key combinations, and these are all key combinations ordered in the they're made to be very easy to type. You can see that they use keys that are on the home row, right? So if I want to click on the commits, right, I click on F. I type F, and then I type H. I press HS, and I click on commits, and this is so powerful. You don't have to take your hands off the keyboard and grab your mouse. Which, by the way, especially if you're using a very wide keyboard. So, for example, let me show you. So this keyboard I'm currently using, right? It has a smaller form factor, right? A lot of keyboards, they have this numpad on the end, and so they're really wide. But the actual part of the keyboard you're using is off-center. And so if you also want to be able to grab the mouse with the other hand, you either put the mouse on the far end of the desk, or you put the keyboard on the other end of the surface you're working on. So it's really not ergonomic. It's really not good for your body. It's great. There's no context switch. Your eyes are constantly just looking at a specific point on the screen, and everything's happening. So I used Kit Browser, and I started configuring Kit Browser. I had, for example, a key binding that I used that I could click, I think. Anyways, I could use it, and it would use something like CURL, curl, and it would grab or maybe, I think it was the precursor of YTDLP, which is a YouTube downloader. So I think it was YouTube DL, and it would use that to grab the video, and it would open it in my media player of choice and stuff like that. So I was really having a blast. And then, it was really cool. And I had, specific software that I was using often. So, for example, my browser, it was assigned to open at the fourth workspace. My IDE my default terminal was assigned to open at the first workspace. So I had some workspaces that I built a muscle memory. Right, this workspace is where I have this thing open. It was a bless. And it's not only that, ergonomic is part of it. You learn a lot of things, right? And you build competency. That's a different thing. A third thing on why you should bother with using all of that stuff is, there's this Japanese philosophy of doing what you do, as a craftsman. It's a craft. You it's really important to approach things, to have this desire, this innate desire of things, of making things beautiful, right? Essentially. Anyways, and then I listened to someone who was more senior than me at the time, stupidly, because I didn't know better back then, and I listened to people that I shouldn't really be listening to. And he was like, well, okay, that's all of that is junior stuff, and then if you've spent enough time with your computer, your mind has to worry about more important things. So just use my mouse. I was using, at the time I was not using Arch Linux. I had tried Manjaro, and I was using Void Linux. Void Linux is essentially it's Arch Linux without systemd for a bunch of reasons. And I went back to a more conventional distro. I think it was PopOS. So PopOS, which is a cool distro for someone that's wants a good experience out of the box. That's close to, for example, the experience you might have gotten used to in Windows. So I used something like PopOS. It had good GPU drivers support and stuff like that. I think I used it with something like XFCE, or I don't think it was GNOME. I think it was XFCE. Anyways, I went back into this blah 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 stacking window manager bullshit. And that was the end. And then I got my Mac, and I never looked back, and I tried to make it usable. Macs are, you have a terminal. First of all, okay, so this is not a good terminal. It could be worse, true, but it's really not good. So it has a terminal, right? I can do Linux stuff. That's pretty much where this ends. They're not really usable. So for example, if I click here, it does this thing. I don't know if you can see it on the stream, but this drives me crazy. Scrolling by default, I'm using the scroll wheel, right? And to scroll downwards, I have to scroll upwards so that I can scroll down in the page. It's reversed. So much stupid stuff. So I configured my Mac a little bit just to be able to use it. And I tried to use some things. So there was this thing called Yabai. Yabai is a tiling window manager, right? Like i3 for macOS. It was too finicky at the time, and also it requires you to give it a lot of permissions to work properly. Like, you have to disable system integrity protection. That's one example. Yeah, you have to do a lot of stuff like that. So I really tried to configure Yabai, but I eventually gave up. And then I would, periodically I would maybe buy, because this is Mac after all, this is the Mac ecosystem, I would buy an application to try and make my Mac more usable. A good example, I guess, okay, so there's something called Raycast. Raycast is something you can use instead of Spotlight, so instead of this thing, to launch applications. And you can also program it, and you can have it do a bunch of other stuff. So there's Spotify integration and things like that. So I got Raycast to launch stuff. I got I think it's called Swish for macOS. Swish, they have this insanely great window management. That's a bold claim, but you can do trackpad gestures, and you can also have some keybinds, and you can snap the windows to predefined areas. I mean, it's better than having nothing whatsoever, but it's not that good really. Home row is another example. So it's really common for some reason. I think that's a trend of the past, but it was really common that if you wanted your Mac to be usable, you had to sort of buy these apps. And I'm fine with buying some software if it's usable and if it's usable and if it's useful, and if buying the software means I own the software. That's very important. For some definition phone, right? Home row is another example. Oh my god, that's too bright. I really have to start installing extensions. So home row is what I showed earlier in Qt browser, but I guess it works with Electron-based apps. Let's see. So I can see Safari, Google Chrome, Firefox, Slack, Code, Discord. Maybe it's not Electron. Non-native web-based apps, and I don't exactly know how it works, but you can see you can open up Spotify and you can press a button. I mean, it's useful, but it's not ubiquitous. It doesn't work with every app. That's a problem, and it's really hard to have some apps where you can have this kind of a workflow and then go work with some other app, and then you have to go back to using the keyboard and mouse. There's something called mouseless, I think. Yeah. So mouseless works, is ubiquitous because it fundamentally works in a different way. You press a key. This is not a very well designed. Yeah. So you tap something and it brings up this overlay. And then if you want to click, for example, here, right, you have to, so this is, I guess, these are all columns and these are rows, something like that. So you type, you press, for example, E. No, that's not how it works. Maybe you press 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. What do they say? Well, that didn't work. Tap command to bring up the overlay. That's a cool software. Type 2 keys to choose a cell. Yep. And then essentially you're choosing a cell, and then it brings up these little smaller cells, and you can press a specific key to click somewhere on the screen. So the concept is you can use but a few keystrokes to click wherever you want on the screen. Anyways, so that's how I rolled, and I did a clean format of my Mac yesterday. I regretted that because I had this C code base that wasn't really under version control, and I kind of lost it, but it's still in my head, so I'll get it back. So anyways, I said, okay, it's high time. I have to start looking into Dotfiles again. And what I'm starting to, this only happened like 2 days ago, maybe. But I made a thing. I made this thing, right? This is the default. So let's go here. And Dotfiles again, there's, you have files These are configuration files. Typically, they start with a dot, but that's not a hard rule. And you use these to configure the programs. Now, a problem is how do you manage those files? Because when you start using specific software, and when you're configuring this software, the next logical idea is, okay, can I automate this process of setting up my machine to be the way I want it to be? And you can write, scripts, and I guess Larbs is an example of just that. So a bunch of scripts, it downloads a bunch of software, it configures the software in a specific way. And so you can have a single script and you can run that script and it will make any machine, at least any fresh machine, be just the way you want it to be. So that's really cool. That's really powerful. And so I looked into how you can manage Dotfiles. What people commonly do is, so Dotfiles can be in a bunch of places. So they create symlinks. Symlinks in Linux is shortcuts in Windows, or macOS maybe. I don't know if macOS has shortcuts. I guess it does. So what they do is they create symlinks. And what that allows them to do is it allows them to have a single directory where they populate it with all of the dot files, and then they symlink each individual file to be in the place it has to be. I think symlinks actually are sort of something like pointers, right? It's very interesting to. I won't get into this now, but it's really interesting to look into what exactly a file is in Linux. It's really intrinsic to the operating system. It's nothing crazy, and symlinks are just pointers to these files, right? And of course, there's a bunch of problems with this approach. If you change stuff around, if you change the layout, or if you're using, for example, a different machine, a different distribution, or a different operating system even, you kind of have to go through the trouble of updating the symlinks and stuff like that. A better way to manage the dot files is to either use a script that syncs them, like use rsync or whatever, and sync them and fetch them. And essentially you want them you want to place them under control, version control. So for example, Git, you want to make a repository and you want to have that repository and be able to clone or fetch from that repository and get at least, all of the configuration files and stuff like that. A problem with that is, again, you haven't solved the symlinks problem, and you've also you have the dot files at your home directory, right? So it's very common to put all of the dot files here. And in fact, there's a lot of programs that expect to find dot files here. The problem is you can't really make your home directory to be a Git repository, right? Because it will have so many things and you will have so many files you have to ignore, and it gets messy. And so if you look into how people manage dot files, there was this, I believe, there was this Hacker News comment. Oh my god, that's too bright. Yeah, there was this Hacker News comment. Oh Jesus. Ask Chen, what do you use to manage dot files? I use git init bar. So this initializes a bar repository. Home.myconf. Alias config, user being git dir, blah 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 blah. Config status, show untracked files. No. Then any file within the home folder can be versioned with normal commands. That's really cool. I ended up going down a different road. So there's this file called GNU-style. It's a software. I guess it's kind of universal, right? And it was originally developed. So if I pull up the manual, sure. So the motivation for the motivation for a stow was you could have wanted to have different versions of the same software installed, right? Or maybe what it says here, if you compile Perl from scratch, if you build it from source, you end up with these files, which man pages get removed, Perl.1 gets removed. It's hard to keep track of things. So what stow does, before package managers were a thing, what stow essentially does is you have a directory and a target directory, and it creates the symlinks on the target directory to mimic the directory that you've specified. And I'll show you how this works in practice. Now, here's how so there's a ton of different stuff you can do with Dotfiles. And people working with Dotfiles, this is a sort of a rabbit hole. They tend to introduce a lot of scope creep, right? And they have millions of plugins and copy-pasted lines in their configuration files that they don't really use, and they have dozens of programs that they don't really use. And so now I've been out of this game for quite a while, and I think I've matured enough to know how to actually approach this Dotfiles thingy in a bit more disciplined way. So I have some fuzzy heuristics for how I want to build my Dotfiles. First of all, I want to work with as few software as possible. I want to have a few software that does anything I want it to do. Now, in practice, in my day-to-day, I write a lot of code, right? I use the browser, and I don't really think I mean, of course, I might use something like Slack, for example, or Discord maybe, or OBS, but most of the things I can do, I'd rather do in the terminal either way. So I want my Dotfiles. I'm not counting Windows. Windows is just a mess. I don't really use Windows directly. I want my Dotfiles to be somewhat easy to set up in the sense that the software I'm using is widely available. It's universal, so to speak, and I would like it, if possible, to not use anything crazy. Now, there's a very big exception to this rule that I'll talk to you more about. So I sat down and I thought a bit about stuff, and I said, well, okay, what do I actually need? I need a terminal emulator, right? I want it to be good. I want it to be cross-platform. Ideally, I'm not really interested. There's a lot of terminal emulators, right? So let me show you a bunch. Oh god. So in macOS, as I said, the default terminal app isn't really great. And what people use, why does this? Hello? What people often use in macOS is something called is an application called iTerm2. And iTerm2 is really good, right? It's a really good it's really good software. So this is iTerm2, and I'd actually recommend iTerm2 for macOS. It's really good. It has a lot of features. It's performant. It's good enough. The big problem I have so if I open up a random Reddit terminal, people recommend iTerm2. Now iTerm2 has one single problem. it is a very, you can actually configure it, right? So you can use it without being a power user. It has very sensible defaults. You can configure the shit out of it. But for some reason, unless I'm mistaken, of course, I might be mistaken, to configure this, you have to configure it through a GUI. So there's a lot of nested options, and you have to click on boxes and use GUI selectors, and that's not really my cup of tea. And I don't even know if that's something that's really that I can programmatically set up. So if I want to set this up, how will I, will I have to replicate everything from scratch? I don't know. So there's a lot of terminal emulators. There's Kitty, there's Alacrity, there's a new hyped kid in the block, right? Ghosty TY, with the most atrocious web page. Like, what is this? It has no information. This is bad. Like, tell me why I should use your thing. Western. There's so many different terminal emulators. I'll be using Alacrity. It's whatever. I might change. There's even things like ST from the Sackless software group. ST is a problem because I'm not really sure what its dependencies are. For example, to use it in macOS, and also, I mean, it's just C code, and if you want to, it's really bare bones, and you have to apply patches. You have to change its source code to modify the source code, and each time you have to rebuild. Now, a cool little project I might do is you can do hot reloading in C. That's something you can actually do. It has to do with the way if you're dynamically linking stuff, and you use things like DLOpen. Now, of course, the problem then is that DLOpen is not cross-platform. So, anyways, a cool project might be to make ST be hot reloadable, so I can edit stuff in the config and see how the terminal is updated without having to close and rebuild and open it up again. Anyways, I'm not really going to use XT. I'm not really going to use something like RxVT or URxVT. I might. I'll just use Alacrity. I don't really care that much. So that goes out of the way. Now, the single most important thing here is Tmux. Tmux is a terminal multiplexer. What is a terminal multiplexer? A terminal multiplexer is a program, again, everything is software, right? Is a program that allows you to switch between pseudo terminals inside a single terminal. And you can also detach and reattach. I will show you what this means, but in practice, remember how I was telling you that tiling managers were really handy? Well, why bother configuring and using a tiling based window manager when you can just make your terminal to be a tiling based window manager? If everything I do is writing code, right, and it happens inside the terminal. And also, Tmux is really necessary if you're doing any, if you're SSHing into boxes, into servers, because there you only have one terminal, right, by default. I mean, there's programs like MobaXterm, for example, and they have some basic pains, but they're not really that great. So you have to use Tmux. And also, you really want to make it so that you attach and detach and have things running in the background, because if you drop your SSH connection, you really don't want everything to die out. Trust me. So Tmux is a must, and Tmux is universal, is extremely universal, and you can configure it as much as you want. And there's a lot of people using Tmux, and nowadays I try to. This is very much a work in progress, but I try to navigate towards things that a lot of people use. Now, obviously, I don't really mean JavaScript, but I try to navigate towards using things that a lot of people use, a lot of power users use, so that I have access to a lot of learning resources. And the Arch Linux community is a great example, right? Because people that use Arch Linux, they know their system inside and out, and you can use the wiki, and maybe you will encounter some hurdles down the road, but you will figure out how to solve them, and it's such a good learning experience. And at some point in time, if you get good enough at something, you need access to mentorship, right? I mean, being a self-learner is good, but you can only learn so much if you solely rely on learning things on your own. So at least the thing you can do is have access to forums and servers where you can ask other people. So Tmux, my Dotfiles will be centered around using Tmux inside the terminal emulator. We're going with Alacrity at the moment, and then the other essential thing is Vim, a text editor, right? We'll talk about Vim. And you can do a lot of stuff inside Vim. The reason I'm going for Vim instead of Emacs, so Emacs I can really use because while it's really cool and I really want to get into Lisp, and I have written some Emacs Lisp, I've done some game development in Emacs Lisp, nothing crazy, really basic stuff. It's fascinating, right? You have this completely programmable, completely configurable editor. You can have it, be an operating system of sorts. And Lisp is a very, very dynamic, excuse me. Lisp is a very dynamic language, so you can modify things, and you don't even have to close Emacs and reopen it. You can keep Emacs open and continue evaluating stuff, and if you fuck something up, you can enter the debugger and change stuff around. And it's great, but I couldn't really get used to the key bindings. So there's a lot of, so for Emacs, there's a lot of pre-configured Emacs distributions, let's call them distributions. And the same thing also applies to Vim. An example for Emacs is Spacemacs, which is, I think, the one I originally used. So you get it, and out of the box, it looks like this. It has a lot of plugins, configured. So it takes the text editor and it pre-configures it, and it makes it more like an IDE. And maybe they also make it so that it's, there's some abstractions you could use, some specific ways to manage the plugins and dependencies. The absolute one of, honestly, the best. Yeah. Anyways, a very good software, very well designed software. That's really good to teach you a whole bunch of stuff. And the one I was using is Doom Emacs. Doom Emacs is amazing, right? It's incredible. It's fast. It's so well made. It's so well made. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. So you can use Doom Emacs, and you can use Doom Emacs with Vim key bindings that I guess are paired with this very. Emacs has modes and layers and things like that, and there's Evil, which is a Vi layer. So you can use Emacs with Vi key bindings. Not for everything, you'll still have to do to use some Emacs key bindings, but I mean, you can use Vi key bindings for almost everything, and then for the things where there's no Via key bindings, you can either, of course, define your own key bindings, or you can just search and find the command you want to execute, right? It's really easy. There's one problem, right? So this is Doom Emacs is incredible. There is one single problem with Emacs. The problem is Emacs. If you run Emacs, has a TUI. It has a terminal mode. It's atrocious. It has gotten better, but I mean, still, it's not good enough. It was really slow. Emacs was slow. It has gotten faster. There's some, natively compiled native builds and stuff like that. It's not the fastest. It has come a long way. It's fast enough. So if you're not running on low resources, you don't mind. How will you run Emacs if you SSH into a remote server? You can't. Now, of course, there are things you can do. You can have an Emacs daemon server thing set up, and then you can have the actual Emacs client running on your own machine. But that's honestly the reason I'm using Vim instead of Emacs. Now, with Vim, the cool thing to do nowadays is to actually not use Vim and to use something called NeoVim, which is improved. NeoVim is a Vim. I guess it started with as a Vim fork. I don't know. It's fully compatible with Vim's editing model, which is what I want, right? And it's also the reason why I'm not using editors like Kakune, I don't know how it's pronounced, or Helix, right? Because I really, really, really like the Vim keybinds and the Vim editing model. So now, remember how I said I want things to be universal, right? The things I'm using, the things I have in my Dotfiles, I want to use a few things to do everything, and I want them to be universally available so that I can have good guarantees that no matter what machine I end up working on, right? Because I work in aerospace, and I have to work with some machines that have these really old Linux versions, The problem with NeoVim is that NeoVim is bleeding edge, and I like bleeding edge software as long as it actually somewhat works and I have access to the edge. So I'm not complaining, but it has some. I mean, it doesn't care about being extremely backwards compatible, which I really like, because almost no one cares about incredible backwards compatibility, and backwards compatibility really, really, really it limits the amount of cool stuff your software can do, right? And it also reminds me of a keynote talk by Simon Peyton Jones, the guy that made Haskell, who was talking about the programming language Nirvana, where he was saying, when you're developing a programming language, you want it to have some kind of users, or else it will die out immediately. But you also don't want it to reach the Python level, to have 1 million users right out of the gates, because then you will turn into this monolithic thing, and you won't be able to innovate, and you'll have these big companies that force you essentially to maintain backwards compatibility with their code bases and things like that. So I'm really in favor of software that lives on the edge. The problem with that is that NeoVim has, I mean, it's not really a problem, but NeoVim needs a somewhat recent glibc. And I am working on systems with really old glibc versions. I can't use VS Code anymore. I can't use, NeoVim. That's fine. So my idea is I'll use NeoVim, and then I'll fully embrace NeoVim, So I won't try to have backwards compatibility with Vim. What do I mean by that? So, for example, you can configure NeoVim either through Vim script, which is a configuration language made to configure Vim, or you can configure it using Lua files. Lua is a fully fledged general purpose programming language used for scripting. A lot of people learn how to program that way, for example, because you would use it in World of Warcraft to program World of Warcraft. So I want to be using Vim script to configure my NeoVim. I will be using Lua, so I will fully embrace living on the edge. In fact, I will try to use nightly NeoVim when I can, and then I will have this sort of different configuration for when I can't use NeoVim, and I'll just use Vim, and it will have a subset of what I have in NeoVim, and it will be 80% there. And again, my approach going into this is I do not want I really don't want to have a ton of stuff. So this is a good this is a very good thing to keep in mind in general, is you can't really think. Humans are really bad at predicting stuff and at extrapolating. So you're set out to fail if you try to predict how things are going to turn out. So start from now. Don't battle with perfection. There's this quote, this mantra that perfect is the enemy of good. Do something. Don't overthink it, and then instead of preemptively adding in new functionality, observe your workflow, and if something really slows you down, really is inconvenient, then figure out a minimal way to get past this. So I don't expect my NeoVim or my Tmax my NeoVim to have a ton of stuff either way. But I kind of want to hit the sweet spot where I won't be extremely minimal just for the sake of it. Nor will I be trying to maintain some weird backwards compatibility stuff, right? What else? I was using VS Code. VS Code is bad. It's not terrible, right? There's a lot of people that are just absolutely going ham on VS Code. It's not terrible. I think originally it was good, then it was decent. Now I would lean towards saying it's kind of bad. So the big problem with VS Code. So VS Code is one of the very few things that Microsoft got somewhat right. So Microsoft, I guess, did the new Microsoft Terminal, the new PowerShell, C# TypeScript, that remaster of that Age of Empires game. So they have done some stuff that are not atrocious. But the thing with VS Code was it wasn't a text editor. It was not an IDE. It was better than Atom, than Juno. Remember Juno? And it replaced a lot of these text editors. And it was really good. And it was really lightweight. It was really bad in the sense that it was built using Electron, so it was really, really, really hugging your memory. They went through great strides, through great lengths to make it usable, to make it optimized. It was good. And the only problem with VS Code was that while it's open source, and I believe it's also it's licensed under the MIT license. The problem was, and maybe still is, you have access to the code, but Microsoft won't tell you what their build process is. They won't tell you what the process that takes this code as input and spits out the actual binary as output. They won't tell you what it is. So, and I mean, there's telemetry and all sorts of stuff. So you could use something like VS Codium, which is instead of building VS Code, you can get binary releases that other people have built, and it doesn't have all of the Microsoft branding and telemetry and things like that. And something is weird with the licensing as well. I can't recall what it was. I do recall the cursor people. I don't know. Yeah, so the cursor was this VS Code fork essentially that had this LLM integration, and then Microsoft released their own agent mode, and they blocked editors like Cursor. So there's some weird stuff like that. But anyways, so VS Code has become really, really bloated. It's really heavy again, and especially if you're working with machines that have low resources available. VS Code, I mean, it renders the system unusable, even having like 2 instances. And okay, say you're spinning out an Azure instance, right? You want to serve, a couple of microservices or something like that. If you use one VS Code instance to log in using SSH, it's almost unusable. And 2 VS Code instances, it's completely dead. And again, VS Code recently updated their glibc compatibility, and they fucked a ton of people. A good alternative, I guess, is Code Server. So this is kind of cool. So what you can do is you can install this on the server side, and then you can connect using your browser client side. This is really cool, and I think it's also how this functionality is implemented. Why doesn't this work? Maybe I need to be signed in to GitHub. Anyways, so this is okay, but it's terrible. It's still bloated. So yeah, Vim it is. Let's take a look at the Dotfiles. The reason I started the stream in this clean macOS install, by the way, is I wanted to write down the specific things I have to do to make my Mac usable. I want to write them, to write all of them down here, and I've also added some notes about Windows. So yeah, back in the day, I actually tried to make Windows half usable. So how do you make Windows half usable? First of all, you need WSL, right? Windows Subsystem for Linux. If you don't have that, no. So, what do you need other than WSL? You need Chocolatey. Choco is a package manager. Because by default, there's like the Windows Store and the Nugget package manager and a lot of random, things like Discord, right? How do you install Discord, right? You go to, you say, you open a browser and you say Discord, right? And you go to discord.com or something and you say download, and there's this page, and you click on the button and you download the installer, the executable. The problem with this is it's not reproducible, and every time you have to do this, you have to do it again and again and again and again, and this gets so tedious. It's so laborious. It's bad. So you need to be able to handle all of these programmatically, and the updates, right? You want to update your software, and it's very common to use software that's outdated because there's simply no single command you can run to update your stuff. And it's a pain in the ass. So there's things like, there's Chocolatey, which is a package manager for Windows, and there are things like there are things you can install a lot of stuff using Chocolatey. It's pretty cool. And also some stuff that are Linux ports, so Git, whatever. And there's this absolutely essential package here, gsudo, that you can use to, if you have a terminal open and it's not, you didn't open it, as administrator to have the privileges, You can do a blah 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 command, gsudo command, and it's like sudo, which is incredible. And there's some other stuff, right? So as I say here, there's dev drives. So a dev drive on Windows is a new thing. So by universality, dev drives are built on this kind of cool technology, and essentially they're more performant, and you also have some better control of what control in general. So it's a new Microsoft thing. It's kind of cool. There's not a lot of information about it at the moment. So dev drives, even things like, so there are some staples in Windows. There's auto hotkey to have keybinds. It's the problem with this software is I don't really know what it's doing. It might be fucking malware. I mean, I know there's source code here. Maybe it changed because I'm also oh, okay, it's GPL, so can't use it at work. Yeah. Anyways, you can use auto hotkey to create scripts and to assign keybinds to scripts. And then there's also things like power toys I talked about. A lot of people use Rainmeter, I guess mostly for aesthetic purposes. The problem with Rainmeter is, so you can make your windows look like this, and you have this widgets like calendar widgets, clock widgets, whatever, and you can even have this. So maybe let me show you. You can make things really cool with Rainmeter. Right, this is Windows. This is Windows, which is, by the way, this is wow. You can have it. So what they did is they made a script that changes the wallpaper based on the time of the day. Cool audio switcher. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but because it's widgets, and I think it's web-based, like Electron-based, something like that, it's so incredibly resource-heavy. That's how I rolled back in the day, I think. And then there's some newer stuff you can do. So there's something called Komorebi. Yeah, this one. I haven't actually used this, but it looks so cool. I hope it works, right? Because it's just what I want. It says that it works as an extension to Microsoft's desktop window manager, which is absolutely crucial for performance and compatibility. It seems really good, but I haven't used it. But it seems really good. So if I had to use Windows and be using Windows, I would definitely use this. And maybe I spend enough time with a Windows VM or something to make a configuration for this. It seems cool. But anyways, I've given up on Windows, so I just use a terminal and I use WSL, and WSL is the .files are applicable here because I can just use Tmux and NeoVim. That's what I do. I might have to open the browser to read a PDF. I might have to send emails from Windows, but that's basically it. And I have some basic WSL config stuff here that I believe is absolutely essential. For example, WSL by default, it doesn't really give resources back to Windows. It just doesn't. Why? I have no idea. It doesn't. So you have to use an experimental setting to tell WSL, hey, you should give memory back to Windows if you don't need it. Or even better, there's something called a virtual hard drive. A virtual hard drive is essentially you map it's a virtual drive, right? If you have to use, so why would you use a virtual hard drive? Well, it can act as a swap file. So what a swap file is, if you don't have enough memory for what your operating system wants to do, instead of just dying, right? Instead of programs closing. By the way, if you're using Linux, really look into early so the default killer, so Linux have an killer, out of memory killer. So what it does is, if it doesn't have any memory, it just starts destroying stuff, and that's not a really cool behavior. So early is good. Use early right? So what a swap file is if your system doesn't have enough memory, instead of doing all of that stuff, it just takes if you have enough space in your drive, your disk drive, for example, it takes this space and it treats it as a RAM. Of course, it's not a RAM, so access is not as fast, but it doesn't die out. Now, the problem is, when WSL needs to grow this file, it does so without problem, right? That's okay, it works. But it doesn't shrink the file back. And so these files just keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And there's an open issue since 2019 about how it keeps on growing. And there's a commandlet that they give you that you can use to try and shrink those files, but it doesn't really work. And there's a community-based effort. There's this utility. It doesn't really work, so you have to do it manually. And it doesn't. WSL didn't really even respect me when I told it through the configuration where to put the swap file in. So I ended up unreclaimable space, by the way. I opened up my Windows installation and I got like 100 gigabytes left free. And I hardly have any programs and code bases. How is this possible? And I have 400 gigabytes of this shitty file that's not even being used. Anyways, so I have some configs that are absolutely essential, and to my mind, to be able to use WSL. But now let's start configuring our macOS. So a thing I want to do, right, is, okay, so first things first, I want to open up my, I don't know, something to type before I get my NeoVim. So can't I just use it? Do I have to sign in? Whatever, right? I just want to type. Okay, so I will consent, and I will have to deal with fucking advertisement. The internet nowadays, without an ad blocker, it's a no-go. Now, you will ask me, why am I relying on ad blocking extensions? Why do I not have my router set up so that it blocks all ads at the router level, at that point of the network traffic? I should really do that again. This is a new house. I haven't configured my router, but I should. So, okay, so let's see. What do I need on Mac? The first thing I need, right? Let me put this further down below. Cool. So the first thing I need, I guess, would be Homebrew. Homebrew is a package manager for macOS. It's really well known. So we copy, we go to our terminal, and we paste. Okay, so okay, so it's good practice to examine a script right before just blindly running it from the internet. So let's fetch the link first. So you can see here, no, you can't see. Okay, so you can see here, this is a command. What this command does is they have Homebrew in GitHub, and they're just getting the install script right out of their main branch, and they're grabbing it with curl. Now there's this really cool website, I hope it's still a thing, called Explain Shell. What Explain Shell does, it seems like it's still a thing. Oh, it's a tool as well. Okay. Please. Okay. So what Explain Shell does is you can take this, right? So curl curl is a tool. In general, you can do something like curl, and you can go through the manual. That might be good, might not be good, depending on what you're trying to search. For example, if you're working with POSIX threads and barriers and all of these primitives, the documentation is interesting, to say the least. So man page is not that great always, but anyways. So you can take this, and by the way, we'll have to fix that later. You can take this and wrong page. You can take this and you can put it in here. And so curl, right? Transfer URL -f fail silently on server errors. This is mostly done to better enable scripts, etc., to better deal with failed attempts. Silent mode makes sense when you're using it in that way. Makes curl mute. Capital S, show error, makes curl show an error message if it fails. And L, location, if the server reports that the requested page has moved to a different location, it's a follow, right? It tries to follow the redirects. So this is a really cool page to learn what things do. If you find the command, and you wonder what it does, right? And it has the man page in the bottom as well, which is cool. So let's first just grab the shell script. So grab the shell script. Did that? Okay. I think to output this to a file, I have to also do O. I think I have to do O. I think it's capital O. Yep. So let's take a look at the shell script. What do they do? Set U, blah blah blah, fail fast when not using bash. Makes sense, it needs bash, that's why they have that down here. Use single quoted settings, script is running in POSIX mode. Use it, yeah, I mean, that looks good. That's a big script. That's larger than what you commonly find. By the way, so I have a 2K monitor, and my Mac doesn't really work well because it has different. It needs either a Full HD or a 4K screen, and I have to fix that because I'm not really having a good time right now. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm really not having a good time right now. Now, obviously, having said that, I will inspect the script. I won't right now. I will trust Homebrew. Oops, it is what it is. And it isn't what it isn't. So let's go ahead and, just to be sure. So what you can do, obviously Homebrew is very well used, so it's fine. And you can go to the install and take a look at the issues. Issues look good. Right. And theoretically, you would they would have to supply. It's a bit interesting that they're not supplying. They do not seem to supply a hash I can use to check and verify that what I've cloned is actually what I should have cloned. Anyways, so let's go ahead and actually install Homebrew. So bin bash. Have to run it with bash. I'm using ZSH. It's the default in Mac. I think that's okay. By the way, let me make sure. Okay. Okay. Now. Okay. This script will install brew completions and the Xcode command line tools. So the Xline command line tools. So in macOS, I guess that's fine. So I'll just take this and just do a. Can't I? Isn't there? Please dark theme, please dark theme, please dark theme. Okay. Yep. So on macOS, I think that macOS Xcode. I think. So one of the things, I'm not exactly sure what this contains. Dark theme, please. Jesus Christ. Okay, at this point, what's going on? Okay, macOS. Okay, please dark theme. Please. Appearance, no. Yeah, dark. Okay, so system settings, appearance, dark. System settings, appearance, dark. Okay. Yeah, so Xcode includes command line tools that enable Unix style development. I don't know exactly what this means. I think you also get the compilers through. Yeah, so LLVM, GCC, CLang, of course, CLang, LLDB goes hand in hand with CLang. So CLang is it has an LLVM backend, and GCC is its own thing, and GDB is a debugger for GCC, and LLDB is a debugger for CLang. Yep. Anyways, so how are we doing? Oh, we're still executing. I really hope this was a depth, a shallow clone, and that it didn't clone the whole history. Anyways, I won't look into this right now. Next steps: run these commands in terminal to add homebrew to your path. That's a good idea. I am indeed running SSH, so these are the correct commands. So just run these. Good. Should have brew. Yep. So we have homebrew. Let me add this here. Right. Yep. I guess I can do sh. And I guess I can also just paste the installation command here. Right. Okay, so we have homebrew. So now that we have homebrew, I mean, let me take a look at the Xcode thingy. So this is very fascinating. You have to go to the App Store, and I haven't really logged in with an Apple account, and I hope I can use this without having to sign in with an Apple account. Huh. I guess I can. So let me just get Xcode. Oh wow. That's funny. So let me sign in, and should work. Right. And oh boy. Anyways, yeah. Okay, so I don't know why I have to install Xcode. Well, this was maybe the Xcode command line tools. MacOS Xcode command line tools developer or something. Xcode normally is a sufficient interface. Yeah, I think that's the one. So I don't really need Xcode, and probably Homebrew took care of this already. I mean, a simple way I can verify this is just yeah. So I guess this works. But just to make sure things happen in the correct order. So yeah, install xcode command tools needed for Unix dev. Okay. So we have that one. So we don't really. So I shouldn't. Yep. I will. Yeah. Okay. So we have that one. And okay, what do I want to do next? So the first thing I want to do, I want to do a lot of stuff, but the first thing I want to do is probably use a different browser instead of Safari. So I could use Mozilla. So Firefox is one approach, and then the other approach is Zen browser. So Zen browser, originally there was something called Arc, and Arc was this one. So Arc was initially for MacOS. It's built with Chromium, and then they expanded another. I think it also came on Windows, but it probably was broken. It was really made to redefine what the browser experience means, at least as much as the UX is concerned. And they just took the project and they ruined it. They started introducing a bunch of AI stuff, and I mean it's also built with Chromium. Chromium is being, I mean, it's powered by things like V8. There's really talented people that have worked on these things. I really don't like Google Chrome, and I don't want to. I mean, yeah, even if you're not using Google Chrome, if you're using a browser that is Chromium, then you're using Chromium, which is Google, so you're still, contributing to the monopoly of Google in the browser space. I want to show you a few things here. So Richard Stallman that I talked about earlier, clothes tie. So he has his own page, whatever, and I just want to find, so as a matter of principle, I refuse to own a tie. I find ties uncomfortable, so I don't wear them. If ties were simply a clothing option, I would decline to use them, but there would be no reason to make a fuss about it. However, there is an absurd social pressure on men to wear ties as a way of sucking up to business. When I worked at MIT, I was shocked that MIT graduates who, due to their ability and skill, could have almost dictated employment terms, instead felt compelled to wear ties to job interviews. It's a personal opinion. The point I'm trying to make is, so the people who yield to the pressure to wear ties are victim co-perpetrators. Each one who wears a tie at work increases the pressure on others. This is a central concept for understanding other forms of propagating nastiness, including non-free software and Facebook. So the idea here is that, okay, if you don't like Windows, or more specifically, if you don't like Microsoft, Word or something, for whatever reason, it may be politically motivated, it may not be. If you're using Windows, you're actively making it harder for other people not to use Windows. If you're using Instagram, you're making it harder for people not to have an Instagram account, and so on and so forth. And the other thing I wanted to show you was, so there's this project, Ladybird, a truly independent web browser from scratch. I hope this does well. I hope it does. It was a fork from Serenity OS. If it does, I will switch to it. I really hope this succeeds. I think it's not. You can see as Mark Goetz, the Primogen, 37 signals. There's a lot of sponsors. I really hope it works. I think that it's not really usable yet, but I will. Oh, it does run on WSL2 and macOS. I will. Okay, at the moment, many core libraries support components are inherited from Serenity OS, web rendering engine, JavaScript engine, WebAssembly implementation, cryptography primitives, TLS, HTTP. Oh, there's no HTTP 2, I guess. Anyways, I will eventually use this if it goes well, and I hope I really hope it goes well. But for now, let's use Zen, which is cool, and it's also based on Firefox, not on Chrome, which is really good. It is really good. I mean, there's a ton of browsers, whatever. I won't start talking about browsers, you know. Anyways, so let's just grab a browser. Yep. I will not really log. I mean, I guess. Do I mention Zen in my notes? I guess I can mention it for now. It's not really. It doesn't really have to do with my Dotfiles. But whatever. Install Zen browser. And I guess I'll have some notes like changing the default browser from Safari to Zen. So let's add that here. And is this a new Mac thing, by the way? Having downloads here. What is this? I kind of like this. I don't remember having this. Huh. So yeah, Zen. Installing apps is really easy on Mac. So we have Zen, and now I can do Zen. And it's loading. Yes, I want to open it, and ta-da! Let's see. So fresh start. Yeah, skip. I don't really use bookmarks. I want DuckDuckGo as the default. I'll change it either way. And yeah, sure. Basically, you can pin tabs. I'll show you. You can personalize your colors. Can I? Yeah. So you can. Jesus Christ. I just want a purple, man. That's not really purple. That's no. Oh, you can use multiple. Can I? Why is this so hard? I guess, okay, so let's try to make sense out of this. Thank you. I guess I don't really. Oh, this is texture. Yeah. I mean, it looks cool, but whatever. That's kind of. Anyways, that's a cool color. Whatever. I'd like to have some purple, but it's fine. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so welcome to Zen. So what this has, let me close this. So you can pin tabs. So let me, what can't I close? Yeah. So you can have these sort of like pinned tabs, right? Do I really need pin tabs? Well, maybe not for now, right? Because I can easily go to GitHub. I don't need to have it pinned. And then you can have spaces, and what spaces are, they're like workspaces, right? Yeah, that's, let me try and I don't understand why the purple isn't working, but it's not working, so let's just use, yeah, that's fine. Cool. So you can have multiple spaces. I am not really sure. Okay, you can, yeah. So think of these like workspaces. So you can have a space, and this can be, for example, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons, right? It can be compilers, whatever. And I haven't really been using this functionality, but I want to start in Arc. But I really want to start using this. Let me see that a bit better as well. Okay. Can I bring the microphone? That's fine. Okay, so let's do Dotfiles just to be a bit organized. And then of course you have vertical tabs. For me, this is a given. And I guess if you, nope. Oh, compact mode. You like compact mode as well? So what compact mode, what I thought compact mode is, yeah, it goes away, right? That's fine for now. We have to get rid of this. We have to make this hiding. This is atrocious. It just takes up my beautiful space. So we have a browser we can use. Let's install a couple of plugins. So let's install uBlock Origin. I can't type. But yeah, let's install, oh god. Okay, so just to make it easier in my eyes, the absolutely first thing that we're going to install as far as extensions are considered will be Dark Reader. Please. Okay. And how do you access extensions here? Okay. This bit. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, uBlock Origin. With the advent of Manifest v3, blah blah blah. I guess uBlock Origin Lite. I'm really up to date when it comes to AdBlock. I mean, I can add it from GitHub, I guess, but AdBlock, Firefox, AdBlock Plus. Is that considered to be good? I don't really know. I need to Firefox. Why can't I see what the date is? Anyways, so uBlock Origin is the best. Yeah. uBlock Origin. uBlock Origin. uBlock Origin. I mean, these are old, but blocker. I mean, uBlock Origin. Yep. So uBlock Origin is. Yep. So uBlock Origin. Maybe NoScript. NoScript. So NoScript is. NoScript is cool in theory. It really makes browsing the web a pain in the ass. So take it or leave it. I will probably install it, but especially not right now. I do want uBlock Origin. I'm sorry, but I can't really make this page dark. Add uBlock Origin. Thank you. No more ads. So let's open I don't know. Okay. So we don't have ads. Now another thing I want to install. What do I do first? So another extension I want to install. Okay, so let me note these down. Browser extensions. Now these are weird. So for example, at work I can't really. I mean, it would be better if it's in the information security policy that, you should talk to the people in charge before you install extensions. And I mean, there's very good reason why extensions can do really nasty things. So I will put extensions just as a note. So we have Dark Reader. We have uBlock Origin. Let me put this at the top. We have so another thing. We have Kagi. Kagi. I give money to Kagi. So Kagi is a search engine that's good because after LLMs have become popular, Google is, and with all of the advertisement, oh my god, Google is unusable. You can't search the internet. So Kagi kind of helps. Now, I was using so I'm using a password manager, right? And I'm using this password manager, and I have to do three things. I have to migrate, I have to get the Pro Edition, and I have to probably. So I discovered that I was using the extension, the Bitwarden extension, and then I discovered that you can use a desktop app. Now, the sad thing with Bitwarden, I heavily recommend Bitwarden. The sad thing with Bitwarden is that they have a CLI, right? But so you can use, for example, you have a native binary. So the thing with this is that I think it still calls to the... I'm not sure. Anyways, so I will install the extension right now just to get my job done, and then I will do the Bitwarden thing later. So Bitwarden to do migrate to desktop or CLI, EU server, and clean up. So let me just add Bitwarden so that I can, log in into things if need be. Oh my god, why can't I browse this in dark mode? I don't know. Bitwarden is good. Bitwarden is good. It takes forever to install now, and I'm not really sure why. Okay. So, start your journey. I do have an account, but what's going on? Download. I mean, I can. Wait, did it? Okay, no, I didn't. I mean, I can use the desktop app. It's fine. Yeah, I should probably use. Okay, so a good thing with using Homebrew, because it is a package manager. I can use it to update my stuff, right? And I would really want to install Bitwarden using Homebrew, because it's important to be up to date when it comes to Bitwarden. So let me do this. I understand this is okay. While this is, okay, this worked, but I mean, I will do the desktop. It's fine. So another thing I really need is vimemc. Vimemc is an extension, right? Yes. So vimemc is an extension that I can finally use to use the browser. So what I can do is, let's go to GitHub, right? Let's say, I don't know, whatever. Look, I'm using H and I'm using J and K, right? I can use GG just like in Vim to go to the top of the page, right? I can add marks. I think I can do macros. I'm not really sure. Maybe I can't really do macros. And the most important thing is, remember that I was how I was talking with I was talking about home row and mouseless and Qt browser. Well, so I can just do. I mean, it's a different world. So yeah, I mean, let's say I want to go to the compiler thing, and I want to go to src compiler, yeah, and I can press X to close the tab. So let's see, how are we doing over here? Okay, so can I actually use with? Yes, I can. That is good. Email. Yeah, let me authenticate to Bitwarden. Yeah, sure. I have the cable from the mic, and it sort of makes typing hard, so let me shove it off to the side, something like that's kind of inconvenient. That's better, I guess. That's fine. Okay, so let's log into Bitwarden. 45387. And we're logged in Bitwarden. Great. So I will start, logging in various pages. So let's do one, for example. So let's actually log in GitHub. So let's log in. Yeah, this mic cable is never. Don't save. Okay, can I prompt Mac to not ask for? That's a good question. So vimc, did I add vimc in my notes? I don't remember. No, I did not. So let me add vimc here. What can I do about the microphone cable? Maybe put it. Okay, this will be a bit interesting. I think this will work just fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, now I can type. Yes, now I can type. Okay. Yeah. So. Right. So macOS don't save passwords, I guess. Why doesn't this? Oh yeah, right. Okay, so let's do Kagi first because this is really limiting me. So let's do Kagi. I also have to disable. What the? Oh, I'm in Safari. Why? Why? Why is Safari open? What? Oh mon dieu. Oh mon dieu. Huh, that's interesting. So that's okay. Please never ask me to. Yeah, okay. And we're back. Good. Okay, so okay. So let's disable Mac disable passwords. Maybe. No, Mac don't save passwords. I thought I saw something in the settings. I guess that could change. I can probably figure it out, I guess. So let's open the system settings and I have a lot of things to do. Passwords and setup codes. Autofill. No, don't autofill. Don't set up codes. Can I open passwords? Right, let's do Touch ID. No, please just. Jesus fucking. Anyways, I mean that's good enough, I guess. Okay, so let me write that down. System settings, autofill and passwords, and I disabled autofill passwords and passkeys. Autofill Disable autofill passwords and passkeys. Okay. What else do I want? I want a lot of stuff. Okay. What do I want? Okay, I'd like to hide the dock. So system settings, desktop and dock, I guess. Okay, so system settings, desktop and dock, right? And automatically hide and show the dock. That's one. Automatically hide and show the dock. Then animate opening up applications of yeah, so on and animate opening applications should be off. Show suggested and recent apps and docs should be off. Click wallpaper, that absolutely insanely deranged thing. So click wallpaper to reveal desktop on main stage manager. Thank God. Okay, so desktop and stage manager and click wallpaper to reveal desktop online stage manager, and then show items online stage manager. Right, so items stage manager. Do I need okay, and we keep this closed. Yep, I like this. Show widgets. Okay, so widgets. So widgets. Show widgets. Show widgets in stage manager. So not on my desktop, and also default web browser. Default web browser change to something other than Safari. Then okay. So let's do that. Preferred tabs when opening documents. Close windows. I guess. Don't tile. Don't fill screen. Okay, yeah, we have a lot of stuff to add here. Windows. Okay. So let me get rid of that and drag windows to screen edges to tile off. Drag windows to menu bar to fill screen off. Hold Option key while dragging Windows to tile off, and tiled windows have margins probably off as well, right? Tiled windows have margins. Yeah, I tiled windows have margins off. Good. So let me disable everything right here. And can I make this? Why can't I? We'll figure this out. Mission control automatically rearrange spaces. I don't care, or do I care? Based on, I'm not sure. I think what I need to do doesn't involve spaces, so I don't mind. Drag windows to top of screen to no. So this is mission control and drag windows to top of screen to enter mission control off. Okay. Now I'm scrolling and scrolling is reversed for some reason. So scroll. Nope. Natural scrolling. How is it natural? Huh? Okay, so mouse. Natural scrolling off. Okay. Why can't? Anyways, I think that's okay. I also installed like. Did I install anything? No. Okay, so I need to do two things. The first thing is I need to make. I need to do a lot of things, but okay. So let's make our Mac a little bit more usable, and to do that, I told you that Yabai was not that good. Yabai was not that good, but we have a savior. And that savior made a project that's called Aerospace. Oh, and by the way, can I... oh, I also need to do the Kaiji thing. Yep, so Aerospace site GitHub. Right. So it's a nice, like tiling window manager for macOS. It's great. It's perfect. That's what we need. I used it for basically for a day before I clean formatted my Mac, but it's amazing. So install via Homebrew to get updates preferred. Sure. Let me just install Aerospace tiling WM and let me fetch the I mean, what? Okay. Yep. Okay. Okay. Good. So let's do that. No. Yeah. So let's install that one. Okay. It's not authorized indeed. Yep. Authorization is bullshit. Wait, that's it? Yeah. Yep. Okay. So do I have airspace running? No, I don't. There we go. There we go. So you can see how... God. And the best part, the best thing about this is insane. So I'm working on 2 screens right now. And remember when I was talking about sensible defaults? So I'm working on 2 monitors, 2 screens, the laptop screen and another screen. I can have separate. So on my laptop screen, I've created 2 workspaces, and I put something on workspace number 2, and here you can just see, right? You can just see this number is changing, right? And I can keep my terminal on the first workspace, and I can move the browser to the second workspace, right? And that didn't really work as planned. Yeah, that didn't really work as planned, honestly. Okay, remember what I said about the yeah. Remember what I said about the dual screen stuff? I take it back, but I think I know what the problem is. I think can I put this on number 4? Good. Yeah, so the problem is that right now, so how aerospace works, so aerospace, in contrast to Yabai, doesn't really require you disabling system integrity protection and all that stuff. And a trick that it does is it actually hides everything down here. And I think the way my monitors are configured right now, this actually doesn't work as intended. So let's fix that. Yeah, I see what's going on. So bear with me while... Bear with me. Okay, so let's see. System settings. Good. Displays. Good. Arrange. Yeah, so this... Should this be... No, I can... Okay, so let me arrange. Yeah. Okay. And then... Do I need this as a main? Should I use this as a main? Maybe? Okay. So let's see what we have. So this guy should be here. This guy should also be here, but should be at the... Why am I fat fingering this? Okay. And we move, you can see what I'm doing right now. This is OBS. I mean, I can keep OBS here since you're not seeing it. And then this is what I don't want you to see as well. Oh, this is, yeah, now it works as intended. The dual monitor stuff. So, all right. Actually, I think I'd like to bring OBS here. Can close that because I want to be able to see that you're seeing. Yeah, and maybe I need to. So let me lock this. Oh no, it's working as intended. Yep. Cool. Okay, now we're going places. Now we're getting somewhere, right? And alt tab also works, of course. So I can alt tab. This is incredible. So one more thing that I need is first of all to set up Kagi. Have I noted Kagi? Kagi? What? That's interesting. What the? Right, bullshit. Yeah, okay, whatever. Have we noted Kagi? Yeah, I guess we have. Okay, so let's do Kagi real quick. Where do I don't. So let's do Kagi. Bitwarden. I mean, I guess I also need to log in Google. Yep. And let's log in. No, not really. I mean, the only reason I'm showing this online is maybe I shouldn't. Fuck. It's too late. I mean, you can probably find out my email regardless, so it's fine. Huh. That's an interesting way to log in Google. I mean, if it works. It works, I guess. Okay, so this really needs to stop being in Greek. Okay, cool. Okay, so we have logged in our Google account, and let's also do Kagi, I think, with... Come on, don't be like that. Why is this in Greek still? Thank you. Good. Right. Am I using my let me see, member? Yeah, okay, cool. So we have an internet that is searchable again. So I think we can start doing the actual .files. Yeah, so I mean, I'm using the default. Okay. So let's save and quit, and let's install one final thing, which is GitHub CLI. GitHub CLI brew install GH. Yep. So this is CLI for GitHub brew install GH. Terminal brew install GH. And let me also I mean I need a few other stuff as well. So I need, okay, so let's see. Install GitHub CLI, GitHub CLI, so right. And GitHub CLI is here. I don't know how that worked. Yeah, okay. And I need Alacrity, and I also need, I don't know. So let's get Alacrity. Right. So Alacrity. Sure. Install. I might my notes might contain oops. My notes might contain no. My notes might contain duplicates, but I will, Jesus Christ, I will merge them later. Okay. So yeah, Alacrity is right here. Should be right here. Alacrity, yep. And we just good. And we should have Alacrity. So we now have a terminal. So I'm closing this, and I'm opening Alacrity. Yeah, so that's a cool macOS thing, and when I say cool, I'm really being sarcastic here. Settings. Please open the system settings. God damn it. So privacy. Yep. And hello, Alacrity. Yeah. So I know it's small, but I will change the font. I don't want to zoom in. So now, okay, let's zoom in. So now what I do is I will authenticate. Don't I need to authenticate? Yeah. What? Get out, login, I guess. I mean, I can just try and clone. What? Do I have to do? Okay, I have to do repo first. That's okay. What? Didn't I repo clone? Something like that? Yep, okay. Git gh auth login. Yep. SSH. Yes. Yeah. So let's do Bitwarden for that. Bitwarden. Yeah. Okay. And Let's make a new note. Can I? Don't be like that. Thank you. You're really not making my life easier. Okay. So, Joe MVP2 SSH MVP2 SSH. Yep. And just make it so that there's a hidden field. And pass. Okay. Yeah, so now this is a problem. And the problem is there is no password generator in of course I'm not going to use this one in the desktop app, which is a bit weird, but anyway. So let me edit and let me paste and save and close and bring this back and terminal. I think, okay, paste works like that. Passphrase, GHCLI MVP2. Good. Good. Yes. And yep. Good. Okay. So let's run this command again. Yes. And let's paste this one. Good. So now we have our .files repo. And do we have stow? We do not have stow, so we need to install stow. That's interesting. Vim, yeah. Okay. Install stow. So to install stow, GNU stow. I mean, I guess I can do brew to install this. Do they have binaries? Yeah, they kinda do, I guess. Oh, they're running Triskel, yeah. Stow latest. I mean, it's kind of old, so brew GNU stow. When was this? 2.4.1. 2.4.1. I can probably just use 2.4. Is this the more up-to-date version? Let's see. 2.41. Okay, it is indeed the latest, so I can just use that. Brew install stow. So brew install stow. And we get stow. And then I can do this and it will Okay, so first of all, let me... Did Stow just not work? No, wait, I think it... Envim. Oh, right. So I need to do... I'm on a different branch. Are you... Yeah. So let me... Huh. There we go. Okay. Okay, so now in theory, if I do I have NeoVim? No. Okay, so let's install NeoVim now. But yeah, install NeoVim. So to install NeoVim, how do people install NeoVim in MacOS? So oh right, yeah. So to install NeoVim, I actually use Bob. It's not in here. So if you take a look at this, yeah, so I use Bob site github.com. So I use Bob, and what Bob is, Bob Envim. Bob is a version manager for NeoVim, so I can use Bob to install and manage my NeoVim installation. So I guess the way I'm going to install this thing is, yeah, let's do it the correct way. Yeah, okay, so let's see how to install stuff on macOS. So there's something called the XDG, the base dir spec, right? So what the base dir spec is, it's not that widely used. It's quite widely used. It's not the most widely used thing ever. It's a couple of specifications that basically define, where is the actual website? Why is this so? It defines, yeah, that's better. Yep. So it defines where things should be placed, right? And these default to home / blah 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 blah. So based on this one, I'm placing local executables in here. I'm placing system-wide binaries in here. Right, so home .local.bin. So let's make dir p home dot local good bin, right? Let's now grab the correct release that we want for Bob. So the correct release that we want, we are using ARM because we're using a MacBook that uses an M processor. And so we're using ARM and we're using macOS. So this is what we want. I probably need unzip as well. So do I have unzip? Okay, I do. Sure. Oh, and actually that's not what I meant to do. I mean, that works in this particular case, but there's an easier way. Yeah, that's not what I meant to do. So let's just delete everything here. Okay, so yeah, so what I meant to do was do I need, do I want OpenSSL? I mean, sure. Do I have OpenSSL? Yeah, okay. So let's grab the file. I didn't know that wget doesn't exist. Okay. So the notes install wget brew install wget. Sure, let's do that. Yeah, wget is a utility to, well, get things. So let's grab the file that way, just because I don't have to go to the Finder and, you know, or use a terminal and move it from downloads to here and stuff like that. It's just muscle memory. I mean, you don't have to do it that way in this particular scenario, but so let's grab the file. Good, and we have the file, and let's unzip it. Good. Okay, and let's move Bob to local /bin. Good. Now, if I type Bob, it shouldn't work because I haven't added home /that local /bin to my path. I will do that, but let's first just execute, you know. Oh yeah, so I also need to do this. Yep, that works. So Bob install nightly to get the nightly version of Neovim. And then I think you also need to do use. So use nightly. Yes, please. So that's sad. So I have some... Where am I talking about, Bob? Yeah, if you didn't add to path automatically, you need to essentially source blah 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 / blah blah Bob and VSH. So I am using ZSH, but I don't really... Okay, there's a Z profile. Yeah, so let's add... source home local share Bob and sh. Let's confirm that this and yeah, okay. So let's just Huh? Okay, do I have Neovim? I do. That's great. So I can do cd prime. Finally, I can cd here, and I can open this here. And I mean, let me. Okay, so let me close this. Open it up again. Great. Yeah. So this is my config for Alacrity. I will fix this in just a second, but not again. I don't even remember what the fix was for this. It'll have to wait. So let's Oh, let's open this. Okay, and let's open notes from here. And let's go all the way down. And yeah. So let's take these and put them here into Mac OS. Good. And I can even RM notes. Yeah, so let's add commit mono so that alacrity. Yeah, so I am using a font in my alacrity config, which is this font. It's free and it's really nice, honestly. It's newish. It's newish. So let's download with default settings. And I think I just opened this. No, of course. I have to open Fontbook, which is a macOS thing. In Linux, you would just do fc cache, dash f dash v, blah blah. And I have to. I think I can just do this. I think that works. Commit mono. Yep, I think that worked for styles. That's indeed true. So let's go to our downloads. Let's delete those. Let's close that one. Let's go to alacrity. Yeah, and let's run this again. And it doesn't complain. So another thing that I want to do is, first of all, fix this, right? So I'm backspace. I don't remember how this gets fixed. Do I have Tmux? I don't. Okay. So anyways, just let me fix this first. So let me nvim config alacrity, right? Sure. And let's make the font size like 16 maybe. I think I can do a bit more than 16. Let's do 18 maybe. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, so what do I want to do? Okay, I also want to do something instead of that. Instead of using Spotlight to launch stuff. So in Linux, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's the menu, right? There's the menu, and the menu is why Kagi. I do have the extension, right? Kagi. I didn't add the extension. Kagi extension. Why do I really thought that I did add this. But maybe I didn't. Open Kagi. Oh yeah, they have the extension. Yes, that is okay. Okay, yeah. So there's something called the menu in Linux. Here you go. They have the menu. And the menu is something that you can use to do dialogues and stuff. I mean, it's just a menu. It's really simple. It looks something like that, and you can make a script that uses this, to launch stuff. There's other things like Rofi, which is a Windows switcher specifically, and I mean, again, you can customize this, and this is customized, I guess, right? Where is it? Yeah, this is Rofi. It's customized. Can I use Rofi? Is it cross-platform? Because I mean, if it is, maybe. Yeah, that's for building. Install from release. So there's also the menu MacOS. This thing. And it actually worked. So let's use that. Disable Spotlight. Yes, please. So to fully disable Spotlight on a Mac, you disable its indexing and remove its keyboard shortcut. Yeah, so the menu Mac. Alacrity. City Prime files, Vim. Readme. Yep. Go here. I don't remember. Install. The menu Mac. Brew install the menu Mac. And I also have to disable Spotlight. Right, so to disable Spotlight, let's see, system settings. Settings, Siri. Spotlight. Oh my god. That seems really, really unnecessary. So let me add those as well. Yeah. Spotlight. Yep, Apple. I have a candle. I've lit on a candle. It's a cool candle, but I think I wanna extinguish the fire because yeah. Oh, and also I'll terminate the stream in a bit and go to sleep probably. So let's see. This should be really, really, really hot. Yep. So let me just do this and. Okay. Alright, so help Apple improve search off. What other kind of crap do we have in here? Oh my god. Okay, so this seems promising. Sudo, yeah, sudo launch. We can try that. We can definitely try that. Right, that's right, it's fine. Sudo. Launch city. So they probably moved it from here. Wait, can I just use this? Disable the... Enabled? No, don't enable it. That's really fucking fun. Disabling spotlight. Indexing disabled. So I guess this is fine. Also, yeah. Yeah, and also just deselect everything. So deselect all of these things. And okay. Okay, and I'd also like to figure this out. So launch CDL playlist. Nope. Okay, launch. That's probably the process list thing. Launch CDL. Apple metadata MDs. Disable spotlight. Unload. It drains the battery. Yeah, the problem with this is it probably doesn't work anymore. Spotlight is a dope feature. No, it's not. It's really not if you use it the way I do. Okay, whatever. I think it worked. Yep. Yeah, so now I don't really remember how to use this thing. Did I install it? I don't remember. Do I have I need to stop fixing my shell. Yeah, this is painful. So how do I run this? How do I run this? Yeah, so the menu Mac. Yes, I did install it and open the app. So I do have to run this thing. Ah, no. Okay, I guess I can do brew. Oh my god, this is getting unusable. Brew remove the menu Mac. Okay, and now we do this. Brew install the menu Mac. So it. Oh, I've stopped indexing it, but I don't have. That's unfortunate. macOS Finder open from terminal. Open. Okay, so open and applications and the menu Mac. And yep, and how do I run the settings? Oops. Yeah. Spotlight no. Please just tell me how. Thank you. Okay. And security and open anyway and open anyway and yep. Okay, we have the menu probably. Please. So can I? Yep. Okay. So we're getting there. Cause now I can just fuck you. Yep. So now. Yeah. So now I can do, notice the top of the screen. So notice here, right? I can have this thing pop up and I can do, for example, alacrity, and I can just use this one. Now for the final thing for today, and then I'll go to sleep. Or at least close the stream. Let's add tmux. So, and maybe fix the shell. So tmux macOS. I guess brew. Yep. So and vim readme. Yep. And install tmux. Brew install tmux. So brew install tmux. And theoretically, because I have my .files in place, let's see. Yep, I have my config. So here I can, for example, create a new pane, right? So you can see I've created a new pane, right? And let me create another pane, right? And I can move between those, of course, as I want. And then you can also see, for example, that if I close the window number 2, then the window number 3 gets assigned the new number 2. So if I go to window number 2 and I close it, yeah, I get 1 and 2 again. So we're getting there. We have tmux. And for the last trick for today, let's try and fix our shell. So we broke our shell. So what could have broken the shell? It could be the alacrity, maybe. I don't really remember. Oh yeah, and we also have to do neovim. Term is alacrity. These seem fine. I don't remember and I can't think. Okay, so let's do the neovim config at least. That's funny. So yeah, so for the neovim config, for the So for the neovim config, it's extremely basic. We need plug begin. Right? We need plug. So to install plug and vim. Yes, sir. Download. So I can just do this. I can just do this. Should work. So if we, yep, now it worked, and you know. Ta-da! Now of course this won't really work, I guess. I have FSF. Yeah, so I can start playing around with things, but I really need to fix my shell, and I don't remember. Shell doesn't clear. Yeah, it's this one. So it's alacrity and non-terminal type. Yeah, I think I faced this issue in WSL as well, but I forgot to document this terminal type. So I think it had to do with. I think it's this one. Yep, it needs a term info. So let's do that. And it didn't really get fixed. Maybe I need, okay, this got fixed. Okay, so maybe just alacrity and cd prime files and vim. Yeah, I think it got fixed. So let's just go to alacrity, the first mention, because I will blend. For alacrity. No, for alacrity. Run this to install the needed info. See this. Okay, so we're pretty much good to go. I have to install stuff like command line utilities. I also have to, so for example, this is way too slow. I have to make the key press be able to repeat, to go faster, the event to repeat in a higher frequency. I have stuff I need to do, but that was a good start. And also, set up SSH, GPG, Git, all of that good stuff. Yeah. So that's okay for now. I only want to add this because I only changed the font to in alacrity TOML file because this is a huge screen. And also, actually, before I commit this, let me not forget. So display. So this is a macOS thing, and I absolutely need it right now. Do I just... Yeah, sure. Better display. Yep. This is essential. Consider installing better display, right? And probably we don't need this, right? Yeah, so what this does is I'm using I'm on my MacBook Pro and my monitor is 2K and it's really bad. So to almost fix this, I can use better display to almost fix this. It's not perfect, but it's really good. Better display. Yes. Oh, thank God. Okay. Yep. Okay. now we just click on the icon and we click here. Yep. Good. Yes. Good. Done. And do I have to change something? I don't remember. Resolution, display mode. It's a DPI. Is this? Oh my god, yeah, that's so much better. Holy. Oh my god. And I can also change the brightness here. Oh my god, yep. Okay, so I think this will be all for today. Readme, git status, git, and maybe I can also configure this real quick. Add macOS initial notes. Yeah, so we don't really have GPG on macOS. So GPG macOS. Do I do homebrew? Just links the GPG to binaries GPG. Your GPG command is actually real, blah blah blah. So I just do brew install GNU-BD, yeah. And then me install GPG, brew install GNU-PG, brew install GNU-PG. I will have to set it up, but you know how it goes. So yeah, I will end the stream. And there's a few other things we need to do. There's a few other things we need to do on our Mac. For example, this has to go. The repeat, rate for the key presses has to be way higher. Stuff like that. But honestly, I hope that with a few more tinkering, I can move on to continue working on my code bases and on my Dotfiles. So this was a good session. We had a lot of stuff to do. And yeah. I think that will be all for now. So thank you very much. And I will see you on the next stream. If I manage to quit OBS. Which I don't seem to be able to do. Maybe I just press on. Yeah.